College Gym fan, going live on YouTube, streaming live on YouTube. Sorry, it's so blurry. My iPad is like this when you put it in one direction. I don't know why. But I'll go to Streamium.
I think he wants you to hand over your package before his knife accidentally slips. Your friend won't be needing his drink anymore.
Okay, this is University Pipe Bomb and My Baby Drowned.
Mr. Shapiro, step out of the car, please. First responders jump into action. Rescue 911 next.
This program contains true stories of rescues.
This is WFAA 8.3 Dallas, Texas.
Have helped us reconstruct the events as they happened. We begin on March 28th, 1991 in Lawrence, Kansas, as nighttime settled in on the campus of the University of Kansas. Judy Lowe had been a police dispatcher for more than 5 years.
We get bomb threats all the time, but nothing ever happens. I mean, they never go off. The thing that was different about this, though, was there was no threat ahead of time.
More than 300 students lived in the JRP dormitory near the center of campus. By midnight, only a few of them were still awake, including security monitor Brad Stulzatz.
I had a test the next day, so I was last minute cramming, trying to get it all in. The lobby had quieted down. Most of the guys were going to bed. A regular, normal, run-of-the-mill night at JRP.
University police officer Herb Martin was one of several cops on stakeout that night, working on a series of campus auto burglaries that had gone unsolved.
While I was sitting there, I saw one red car come into the parking lot with two individuals in it and who were sitting in the car and had the dome light on, so I could see both of the guys. but only one of them got out of the car. He walked up the hill toward the area where we keep our police cars and security jeeps. As he was walking up the hill, I noticed there was something held on the side of his leg, but I couldn't tell what it was.
934 KU, I've got somebody messing with one of the security jeeps on the drive.
That's gonna be lot one? It was pretty much behind our building, right where we were.
He took off like he was lit with firecrackers.
There's one vehicle leaving lot 50 this time, small red vehicle, shoot up, Kansas plates, I believe it's David, X-ray, possibly George. No further.
Which direction did you last see the vehicle going from which location?
Taking that vehicle went north on Mississippi from 11.
10204.
I went on back up to check the Jeep to see what this guy might have been doing.
What have you got up there? It looks like they stuck a pipe bomb in the east of the Jeep, security Jeep, on the ramp behind GLT. 10-4 security area.
When we continue,
We had a bomb, probably with a timer, and we didn't know how much.
We don't have to worry.
Oh, can I help?
Play now.
On it.
What's your location?
And of course, that's a pretty sticky wicket, trying to figure out whether we should evacuate people from the wing of the dormitory. Would we have time?
There's a lot of windows facing that direction, and I could envision shrapnel from that device and from that Jeep flying through those windows.
Sergeant Skylar Bailey was at a surveillance post with his partner, Detective Mike Reiner, who had some experience in identifying and dealing with bombs. Detective Reiner was rushed to the scene.
Mike, it's up under the front, over the axle. All right, stay back.
We have a red Chevette is what last seen north of
Officer Bob Williams was on routine patrol less than 2 blocks away when he heard that the suspect's vehicle had been headed in his direction.
David X-ray George.
204 K.
204.
Could you check with her and see if the vehicle was it dirty? Didn't read the tag, it had dirt all over it.
Actually, I just thought that there's no way it can be him. I mean, man, this is stupid if it's him to pull over there.
What one look like? About 6 foot, 6'2", swim, maybe 160. Did somebody have a sweater by any chance? A charcoal gray, kind of checkered sweater. Okay, King, I got the vehicle.
Here 1020.
I just asked him, I said, would you mind coming back up on campus with me to the police station? Sure, no problem.
Detective Mike Reiner returned to the station to pick up some protective gear.
Gentlemen, I don't believe he's involved. The guy that does the tape, I'm sure, is still in the area.
He looked very determined. He just had this look on his face like it was something he had to do.
We'll know just a little bit. Yeah. Right on that grip.
Let me look out the window here. The vehicle's in great shape. Oh my gosh.
I walked back down to see what kind of damage it had caused. And I saw a crater about 3 feet in diameter and about somewhere between 6 and 10 inches deep. Just all of a sudden hit me that this was real. If I had taken time to do anything else upstairs when I was getting my equipment, it could have gone off in my hand. I could have been killed. And my knees just kind of turned to rubber, and I just kind of sat down and flopped over on my back and shook for a few seconds. The building shook when the bomb went off, and I was scared. I had no idea what was going on. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the flash, and then I heard it go. And I know I must have jumped 2 feet. I looked at the kid, and he was calm and cool throughout. He just looks at me and says, "Pardon me, sir, but just what was that?" I said something along the lines of, "I think you know what it is, and we need to talk about it." The people that were responsible later said that they built the bomb just to see if they could do it. They said they didn't mean to hurt anybody, and that was not their intention, but they wanted it to be a big deal. And it was. They've both been convicted, and I think they both got 27 or 28 months in the penitentiary.
Mike Reiner was awarded the University of Kansas Police Department's Medal of Valor.
A lot of people told me that what I did was stupid, that I was crazy. I really couldn't see that there was any other choice.
What he did goes against most training, but I know why he did it. Here's an explosive device placed under a vehicle that has a gas tank parked not that far from a residence hall where there are a couple of hundred kids and they're sleeping. Mike's a hero.
And this was the first time I think it was really hammered home to me that you could be here today and gone tomorrow. You could be killed. I got my first gray hair 2 weeks after this and promptly plucked it out.
Next,
I have not seen very many children survive this. I whispered to a fireman, "We've got to hurry. We're going to lose him if we don't."
Stuffed up. Stop suffering with
when Tammy Nethercott and her husband Don moved their family to the small town of Merlin, Oregon, they thought their children would be safe. But on the afternoon of October 3rd, 1991, just a few weeks after settling into their new home, one of their worst fears came to pass. While Tammy worked inside the house, she asked her daughters Danielle and Desiree to keep an eye on their 2-year-old brother, Christopher.
He's an explorer, and I guess that's like normal for 2-year-olds to check everything out. We put up a barricade along the side of the pool. It was just a makeshift for the time being.
Where's Chris? I didn't see him go anywhere, but my mom said look for Christopher Daniel. I went to go look for him. I thought he was on the swing set, but he wasn't.
Emergency. I think he's on the ground and he's opening up 2 years old. What happened? I think he's on the ground.
I ran in to comment on
life. No, nothing, nothing.
Okay, you're gonna take my time. I need you to relax, okay? Tell me what's happening so I can help you.
He was in the car. Straight down. I think he got it out of
Okay, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Is he breathing?
No.
Okay, I want you to stay.
911 dispatcher Katie Duncan joined dispatcher Lisa Small on the line.
We're trained to work in pairs, so from there I was going to take over the emergency medical portion of the call so that she could dispatch the ambulance and the fire department.
Medic 4.
The nearest rescue units, including EMT Jess Webb, headed to the scene, but they were 7 miles away.
About a month before, I had a 10-year-old drown on me on the Rogue River. I was afraid that this was going to turn out the same way, and it's pretty hard with kids. It hurts.
What color is he? Okay, that's all right. Is his head tipped back a little bit? Okay, now listen to me. Put your mouth over his mouth and nose, and blow 2 little breaths to fill up his lungs. Okay? Oh, no, wait, no. Settle down yourself. Listen to me. Is he breathing yet?
She's on a roller coaster, and it would have been very easy to lose her. If she looks down again and realized the baby's not breathing, then I would have lost the only rescuer that we had at the scene.
Is that okay?
As soon as we realized there wasn't a pulse, I had to control her and get her back into the sequence.
Tip the head back and 2 more breaths. Watch for the chest to rise. Is the baby breathing yet? No. Okay. I'm going to tell you what I want you to do next, okay? Listen to me. Put the heel of your hand in the middle of the child's chest, between the nipples, and push down 1 inch like you're pumping up the chest. Okay? I want you to do that 5 times. 1 per second. 2, 3, 4, 5. Now 2 breaths, and make sure the chest is rising. 2 more breaths. Come on. 1.
But in a rural setting, especially where this address was, you're talking probably 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes or longer until the very first unit arrives.
13 minutes after Christopher was pulled from the pool, the nearest advanced life support ambulance was still more than 3 miles away.
That's okay, you're doing fine. 5. Okay, 2 more breaths. Come on, give him the breath. 1.
I'm not an EMT, I'm not a doctor, nurse, just a typical mother.
Bring him on the side and tip his head back just a little bit. Is there any more water coming? Listen to me. Tip his head back.
He didn't have any color in him, except for his lips were purplish blue. I was feeling scared because I was thinking that he'd die.
Listen to me. Is the baby crying yet? No.
The thought that we've been doing this a long time and the child was not coming back had occurred to me, but that doesn't preclude you from doing your very best.
Mike Worley had heard about the drowning from a neighbor.
It scared me to death first time I looked at him. There wasn't no life in him. I couldn't see him do anything. And he's just a little bitty guy.
Keep going. Give him the breath now. Yeah, I want her to keep doing CPR. She's trying. That's fine. Make sure she does. Listen, 2 breaths.
I didn't know where he came from, but that person became a coach on the phone.
Count with her. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's okay. Roll the baby on the side. Roll the baby on the side. Roll him on his side.
Give him another breath.
Yeah, come on. Roll him back and give him 2 more breaths. Keep going. The fire department's there. Keep going. Keep going, though, until they can take over.
4, 5.
We pulled up to the house and we knew that it was going to be bad. We were so far out and he'd been down so long with a guaranteed minimum of 13 minutes that it looked bad. It looked like it wasn't going to happen.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Is the fireman helping now? Okay. Okay. Keep going. I'm going to keep you on the line here until the ambulance crew gets there. Keep counting for me. You're doing a good job.
Breathing on his own, the fireman said.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Okay, bye-bye.
I felt like, well, we've done our best. It's just kind of like a little relay race. We did our little part in the relay race, and now it was someone else's turn to do their best.
Minutes later, the advanced life support unit arrived, and paramedic Jim Bard took over the boy's care.
Hi, Jim. Immediately, I went to the child, and he did have a pulse, but he was only breathing about 4 or 5 times a minute. I have not seen very many children survive this. I whispered to a fireman, we've got to hurry. We're going to lose him if we don't.
Nice and easy.
While Christopher was prepared for transport to the hospital, Tammy called her husband Don at work and told him what had happened.
I wanted to just floor it and just get home. About 2 miles from the house, I finally met the ambulance. It was like being in a tunnel. I didn't know where my little boy was alive or not.
I actually felt grieving for this kid. It was like he's dying and I'm dying with him. I really didn't expect him to make it. I was letting go towards the end.
Christopher was admitted to Josephine Memorial Hospital and examined by Dr. Jim Geeson.
He was extremely critical.
He's breathing about 5 times, we're still assisting.
Initial assessment was very dismal regarding the chance of the child recovering neurologically.
I went off duty a half hour later. It was really a bad night. I cried all the way home.
The little boy was taken to Dorenbecker Children's Hospital, more than 200 miles away. His parents drove through the night for 5 hours straight, not knowing what condition their son would be in when they finally got to see him at the hospital.
He was still hooked up to all the monitors and everything.
But he looked like he had a little more color, and he looked at Tammy and he said, "Mama."
That was a great feeling. I can't explain it. It's probably like rebirth or something.
After 2 days in the hospital, 2-year-old Christopher Nethercott was released without any sign of permanent injuries.
We don't send Christopher out with the girls and say, okay, you watch him. That doesn't happen anymore. They're not old enough. They're playing too, so we watch. But if you have a pool, gotta make sure it's secured. Not just 95%, yeah, it's gonna be okay. Make sure that pool's 100%.
It was just unbelievable. You know, he goes from being in a critical state to being home running around. And it's just perfect.
1 month after the accident, the Nethercott family finally got a chance to thank the dispatchers who worked so hard to save Christopher's life.
Oh, you look beautiful. Hi, Christopher.
Knowing the child's here as a result of the system is extremely gratifying. It makes everything that we do worthwhile.
Let's give Katie a hug. Can we give Katie a hug? Let's give Katie a hug. Give her a hug.
Oh, I got you. Got you.
Hey, I just got a text from my sister. You remember Rick, her neighbor?
Sure. He's the 76-year-old guy who still runs marathons, right?
Sadly, not anymore.
What? You mean...
Mm-hmm. Just like that.
Wow. So sudden. We're not about to have the we need life insurance conversation again, are we?
No, we're having the we're getting coverage so we don't have to worry about it conversation.
So you're calling about the $9.95 a month plan from Colonial Penn?
I am. We put it off long enough. We are getting that $9.95 plan today.
Is it time for you to call about the $9.95 plan? I'm Jonathan from Colonial Penn Life Insurance Company. Sometimes we just need a reminder not to take today for granted. It could be the death of someone you know or a health scare. That's why today could be a great day to call for free information about Colonial Penn's $9.95 plan. If you're age 50 to 85,
All of the 911 calls you will hear are real. Whenever possible, the actual people involved have helped us reconstruct the events as they happened. In an emergency, you may have to try to save the life of someone you love. I'm William Shatner. Tonight, true stories of men, women, and children with the courage and willingness to get involved on Rescue 911. On Saturday afternoon, July 28th, 1990, Gary and Julie Mayo returned to their home in Keller, Texas, after visiting a local nursery.
It was a nice day, sunny day. So we went off and bought some plants. We intended spending the afternoon planting these plants.
While Gary and Julie worked in the garden with their nephew, their three daughters, Nikki, Erin, and Kelly, played nearby.
No, I don't think so. You do. None of you have.
When we originally bought the house, there was no gate, actually, from the back door of the house to the pool. That was the first thing I did, was actually build a fence with the gates on it. Normally I kept the gate locked, and the only time it was ever open was when I was next to the pool. Unfortunately, I was next to the pool.
I remember Nikki going in, and I don't really remember Erin going in, but I wasn't paying much attention. I went up to get the sprinkler, and I stood there for about 20 seconds, maybe trying to unscrew the hose from the sprinkler, and I couldn't do it. And then I just had to turn to the pool, and that's when I saw her.
I've never been panicked in my life. She was completely limp. She was completely blue. I thought she was dead. First thing was to get the water out of her lungs.
So I ran in to call 911.
Communications Supervisor Brent Robbins took the call.
911 emergency. What happened to her?
Baby went in the pool.
Okay, how old is she?
She's 12 months.
Okay, did she got her in the pool now?
Oh, yeah, she looked
Okay, can you tell if she's breathing?
I think she was in the
This one was especially rough for me. My wife was 6 months pregnant at the time of that call. So, I put myself in Julie's place.
Okay, all right, man, you gotta calm down.
Officer John Lee was in the station and the call came in and he ran out the door and was on the way.
Medical agency, everyone, respond to medical emergency.
Rescue units with the Keller Fire Department were also sent to the scene.
Okay, calm down. Get her right next to the phone with you, okay? Your husband to tilt her head back and cover up the baby's mouth and nose with his mouth. Tell him to get two little soft puffs of air blowing into the baby. And watch for your baby's chest to rise up, okay? And don't tilt his head back too far. Yes, stop breathing now? Okay, just keep telling him to do that. Tilt the head back, cover the mouth and the nose, and give her two soft puffs of air. They're gonna be there in just a second, man. Just calm down.
Keller Police Officer John Lee was the first to arrive.
Just bring him to the baby, okay? Okay. All right, man. Take care of yourself.
Can you hear me? Hello?
I felt a little bit of hope. I felt that, thank God I got somebody who knows what they're doing.
Moments later, paramedic David Jones and EMT Charlie Mitchell got to the scene.
When we got there, she did have a pulse, but she wasn't controlling her respirations. She wasn't getting any oxygen in. She was really cyanotic. Her color was pale blue.
Okay. So she's going, y'all get an IV started on her?
Yeah, can I get an alcohol prep?
Yeah. Kelly? Can you hear me, Kelly?
My greatest concern was possibility of brain damage, because with the drowning, you don't know exactly how long they've been without oxygen.
You want to notice?
Her level of consciousness was still real low, so I called for care flight.
Okay.
14 minutes after Kelly was pulled from the water, the medical chopper arrived to transport her to the hospital.
Well, I didn't realise she was going in a helicopter at first. They just put her on the stretcher and I just went out there and I was running behind them and then they said, you can't go on, it's not room for you.
Kelly's parents could only watch as the chopper took their youngest daughter away. When we continue,
I try and reassure them that everything is being done.
One. That's 1-800. Battle.
Home.
the flight to Cook's Fort Worth Children's Medical Center took less than 10 minutes.
We've got a 2-year-old, near drowning. We've got a near drowning.
Pediatric neurologist Warren Marks assessed Kelly's condition.
She was posturing, that is, all of her extremities, her arms and her legs were sticking straight out. She had abnormal muscle tone, which is a sign that either your brain is swelling or that you have injury to the brainstem. Why don't we get Johnny down? She's going to need a hand. Okay, there you go, Johnny.
Pediatric intensivist Dr. Johnny Griggs was also called in.
Okay, Gary, let's get into that whole some traction for you here.
The main objective when she came in was to protect her brain from further injury. We would continue to do all the breathing for Kelly, keeping her paralyzed with medications, keeping her very heavily sedated with medications so that she would expend very minimal energy.
2.5-year-old Kelly Mayo was in a medically induced coma.
We put her in the CAT scan, and there was no evidence of a blood clot, nothing that required the surgeon to go to the operating room with Kelly, but her brain did look swollen.
Dr. Marks,
I try and reassure them that everything is being done, that she's very sick, and it is possible that she's not going to survive.
At that point, I lost it. I started shaking. In fact, the wife had to shout at me to bring me back to reality.
So we were there for about 2 or 3 hours before we went up to intensive care to see her. She looked so small and ill.
it's okay. Consistently 35?
About 35.
Her blood pressure and vital signs initially had been stable, but they now had started to fluctuate as well.
Dr. Griggs was trying to reduce the swelling and the pressure in her brain with drugs.
2 cc's per kilo, I haven't any problem with that.
The first 48 hours were marked by these spikes of an intracranial pressure. The monitor reads out a digital number, with each spike to me indicated that the brain was in more trouble.
And Dr. Griggs, he said they couldn't control the pressure any longer. And he thought she was going to have serious brain damage. I always see Kelly floating in the pool. And she just face down. I see that all the time. And I just think, God, how long has she been there? And how long did she struggle for? And what was she thinking? If she did try and call out and we couldn't hear her.
Kelly had been in the hospital for 4 days when Julie returned to her room to find everything had changed.
Gary was sat there holding her. He was sat in a rocking chair holding her. So I kind of knew then that she was going to be okay.
So then I put that.
Thanks for using locast.org, the nonprofit that makes local, over-the-air broadcast available to everyone. Just $5 each month covers the cost of delivering your local broadcast channels. Please help Locast by becoming a member today.
And then she was arms. It was great.
my moment came when Mom was able to hold Kelly. You've given a child back to a family. A lot of families are not this fortunate.
Kelly was released from the hospital after 10 days. She still has periodic checkups, but after 3 months, it's clear she has no brain damage.
It's stupidity on my part that it happened in the first place. I should have watched it better. And the bottom line is, even if you knew them, you can't turn your back for 30 seconds. Because they can be in. You don't see anybody around. And your baby could be dead.
Drowning is one of the most common causes of accidental death in young children in this country. Kelly's whole family is grateful that she managed to survive.
From the policemen, the dispatcher, to the medics, and the fire department, and the helicopter people, and all the doctors and the nurses. It was fantastic the way it
Oh,
was.
they're having pizza and rides. They must be at Chuck E.
And
Cheese.
she couldn't breathe, and I was scared. Thank you for saving my sister.
Next.
I was almost 100% sure he'd robbed a bank, and I figured if I didn't do anything and just went about my business, I would feel
Freshness is.
So I got in traffic behind him, began to follow him, and called 911.
His call came into Complaint Officer Dolores Lockhart at 2:49 p.m.
Yeah, I think the bank just got robbed on 8th Street and 122nd Avenue. This is Northwest or Southwest? Southwest. This guy comes flying out the bank and there's like all this red dye in the air, and then people came running out of the bank as well.
I was almost 100% sure he'd robbed a bank, and I figured if I didn't do anything and just went about my business, I would feel guilty later seeing it on the news. He wasn't driving fast, wasn't changing lanes rapidly, he was just going with the flow.
This car, it's white. It's a white car? Yeah, it's a Camaro. Okay, what direction did he go in? He's heading on the turnpike now. Turnpike, you know what direction? Northbound. Northbound on the turnpike? Yeah.
I checked on the screen next to me to see whether or not there was a robbery in progress, and if it was in fact a robbery, then he was going to continue following the subject, and there was nothing on the screen. It was unknown if it was in fact a robbery, but I gave all the information that Greg gave so the dispatcher could send a unit out immediately to check it out.
I knew I still had time to make my class, and I wasn't going to be late, so I figured I would ride it out for a while and see what happened. And at one point, during the time I was following him, I thought maybe he knew I was following him, so I let him lapse behind me, so he was following me, so he wouldn't get suspicious. I thought he may have had a gun or been armed, and I wasn't, sure what he was going to do next. So of course my heart was racing out. I was nervous.
Greg tracked the white Camaro for nearly 25 minutes. When it exited the turnpike, he followed.
I was kind of frustrated, having not heard back from 911. Maybe what I saw was not a bank robbery. Maybe it was just some kids playing around with smoke bombs or something. A significant amount of time had passed where I had pretty much given up at that point, not having heard back from her. I was sure that it must not have been a bank robbery.
Less than a minute after giving up the chase, Greg's car phone rang.
Hi, this is Metro Bay Police calling. Are you Schultz? Yes. Okay, are you still beside him, or are you away from him now? I figured, if you're following that line, I figured that must have happened. He tried to get a right off of Alton onto 11th Street, and I followed this far, and I figured, well, you didn't get back to me, so I figured I'm not going to waste my time anymore. He didn't do anything wrong. But he's probably around here somewhere. Damn. Metro Bay PD, to Miami Beach PD. We should have a bank robbery at Southwest 8th Street and 122 Avenue. I just received information that the complainant is following subject. They were last seen at Alton Road and 123 in your city. The vehicles are white,
upset because, you know, at this point I had lost the guy. I circled around the block hoping that maybe by luck I would run into him again and be able to give the police the exact location of where he was.
Just telling me you're right from Alton Road on 11th Street, possibly eastbound.
Officer Armando Torres was just leaving the Miami Beach police station, heading back out on patrol.
Well, I'm normally on a bicycle patrol. That particular day, it was going to rain. So I came into the station to pick up a vehicle. And while I was doing that, the description of the bank robber came to the radio.
Yes, only Hotel B Bravo, F Foxtrot 08 B Bravo. B Bravo, 08 B Bravo. Subject is 11.
I'm coming out of the police station, and there he is. I mean, it's just like being at the right time, at the right place, and the guy being at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Subject is, looks like it's gonna go, westbound 11. That's 2401 11 Marine, you go westbound?
Just ahead of the Camaro was an unmarked police car, driven by Detective Calvin Lincoln.
I looked in my rearview mirror, and I observed a white 1980 occupied by one white male. I assumed that this could possibly be the armed robbery suspect from Miami. At the same time, a uniform unit pulled behind the white Camaro, so putting the white Camaro between the two of us. We don't want to do anything rash like jumping out of our vehicles and start pointing guns at them while you're in front of them. And we had a marked unit behind them, so what would happen is we'd get caught in a crossfire and we wound up shooting each other. So what we did was I pulled over to the side and we took them from the rear.
Go ahead, driver, pull over to the side. The vehicle has tinted windows, so I don't know if there's one individual in the car, if there's two, and if they are armed. Driver, pull over to the side now. The dispatch advises that the guy was armed. It was an armed robbery.
Driver, get out of the car! Put your hands up! Come on, get out of the car! Come on, get out of the car! Put your hands up, get out of the car! Come on, move it! Come on, put your hands up! Put your hands right there on top of the car! Move back! Move away from the door! Come on, stay right here! Don't look at him!
Sure, you're the time 15.
Come on, guys, pretty late.
They were still making the arrest when I was coming up, and I was thinking to myself, you know, we finally won one for the good side.
What did I do?
We observed on his body red dye, which is put into a bank bag by the banks to explode after an armed robbery. He had it on his hands and on his clothing.
After a 30-minute chase, where he finally wound up was a block from the police station. He was no genius.
That's the guy. Come on, guys. Go. Wait a minute. What happened? The other citizen we have one. I called 911.
I think what the citizen did on his car phone was outstanding. We should have more people like that in the community who want to get involved, who have car phones, to make our job a lot easier.
Good job, Greg. I appreciate it.
It is amazing to see a citizen that takes that much effort to help us.
Thank you very much, Greg. I appreciate it.
I had seen a guy rob a bank, and I simply couldn't turn my back on crime. Like the saying goes, evil flourishes and good men do nothing.
The man in the white Camaro pleaded guilty to armed robbery and was sentenced to 33 months in a federal prison.
Dog hair, cat hair, your pet shedding hair is everywhere. And when you're dressed, your clothes are a furry mess. What you need is Fur Daddy, the new sonic-powered fur remover that picks up piles of stubborn pet hair with ease. Just like a sonic toothbrush, Fur Daddy creates thousands of vibrations per minute. Combined with microfiber bristles, it loosens, lifts, and removes embedded pet hair from everywhere. Simply rock back and forth, and fur...
as they happened. We begin on the evening of March 1st, 1990 in Omaha, Nebraska, as Colleen and Mike Campos and their 12-year-old son Clint were getting ready for bed.
It was about 3 years ago when he started having trouble. Right in the middle of a sentence, you could see him, his look on his face would change. He'd go, I can't breathe. And that's when it all started. It's not always in the night, but his worst times are always at night because everything is slowed down and shut down. When the season was bad and the air was real dry, it was just about every night you could expect that he'd have the asthma attack. It always started with a cough. We'd both wake up, but whoever would wake up first would holler, Clint, get up and get on your machine. He'd have to get up and get his machine, which relaxes the airways and makes it easier for him to breathe. It had gotten so bad the last few months that we knew he had to be up quick when he went into his attacks. It was just going downhill is what it was doing. He was standing there trying to pull air in, but nothing would happen. That's when I went running into the bedroom to try to find the shots. He keeps stepping up for the shots for an emergency.
When I came around the corner, he was getting ready to collapse. I put my head on his chest to hear his heart or to see if I could hear him breathing because he wasn't breathing. She couldn't find his shots. He was already turning blue. There was no breathing, no heartbeat, nothing. I thought I'm going to lose him.
The call came into dispatcher Danette D'Amato at 11 p.m.
Emergency service. I need a rescue squad. My son is having asthma, turning blue. How old is he? He's 12 years old. 12.
Volunteer paramedic Glenn Koshi followed the ambulance toward the scene. When we continue,
Okay, ma'am, you're gonna have to come down so we can talk about it, okay? Okay. No CPR. CPR? Yes.
doing this.
After pulling test off.
Okay, test is on the way.
I'm starting to lose her. She was starting to get hysterical again. At that point, I think she knew that she had to calm down in order to help her boy.
Put your ear right next to his nose and make sure. Nose? Yeah, make sure for sure that he is not breathing.
We had already spent a good minute or so. We had to start breathing for him.
Ma'am? Yes? Right. Are you instructing somebody else to do this? My husband. Okay. This is what I'm gonna tell you what to do. Okay, he's flat on his back. Yes. Doesn't have a pillow. No pillow. Okay, I want him to put his left hand under his head. His left hand under his head? Check and see if he's breathing. He's not. He's not. There's nothing. Okay, I'm gonna tell you what to do. Tilt the head back. Tilt the head back. Look up that way. His nose. Okay. Completely cover his mouth. Completely cover the mouth. With his mouth. With your mouth. All right. Force 2 deep breaths over there into the lungs. 2 deep breaths. Okay. Okay. Just like you're blowing up a balloon. Like right his chest to rise. Get his chest to rise. All right. Is he breathing? He started breathing. Let go of his nose. He's moving. Okay. Okay. Turn him on his side a little bit. Turn him on his side. So he doesn't choke. Okay. Okay. Is he breathing? Yes, he's moaning. Okay, good. He's not breathing good, but he's moaning. Okay, okay. He's breathing. He is breathing. I'm coming. You've got to keep your head. All right. He's not breathing again? Breathing at all. Okay, put him back on his back again. Back on his back and start again. You've got to keep oxygen in him, Mike. You have got to.
Mike
was totally horrified. Just this terrible desperation. As time ticked on, just went from bad to worse.
Is he throwing up? Man, tell me what's going on. What's he doing? He's throwing up. There's something coming out. Okay. Turn him on his side so he doesn't choke on it. Okay. If he can sweep it out of his mouth, sweep it out of his mouth and get air. Is he moving now? I don't know. What is it, Mike? What's coming out of him? I don't know. Okay. Is he breathing? There's a funny noise coming out of him.
I gave him probably 2 or 3 more deep breaths, and then I could feel his lips start to tremble. I thought it was his last breath.
Clint started to make this little noise. It sounded like it was coming from the center of him, but it sounded like 100 miles away, and that was personal. That was Clint. And then he started to take little breaths like that, and that was our first sign that he is still here.
He's breathing. Just keep him like that. I'm going to stay on the side. He's on his side. Keep him that way for now. He's breathing. I don't want you to do any more mouth to mouth.
In case something else should develop, it's still important to stay calm.
Tell me if there's any kind of change at all. All right. What always looks like Mike.
Deputy Sheriff Bill Chizek was the first rescuer on the scene.
Okay, they're here. They're there? They're here. Okay, I'll let you go. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
I hung up the phone, took a deep breath, stood up, and I said, oh my God, we just revived a 12-year-old boy who had stopped breathing.
124/90.
When paramedics arrived, Clint's breathing was still labored, but his vital signs were improving, and he had begun to regain consciousness.
I went over and stood with Mrs. Campus. I said, "Oh, you did a fantastic job." And Mrs. Campus said, "Well, it wasn't us. The emergency dispatcher, she was the one. She was great. She saved his life."
Clint was taken to the hospital where he was treated for a mild case of pneumonia and a collapsed lung, resulting from the asthma attack. Since that night, Clint and his parents have become more aware of what to do to prevent severe attacks, with the help of Dr. Manju Patni.
Asthma is a disease that can be fatal. The kids that have severe asthma should know that this can happen. He has to be able to recognize his symptoms when he's getting tight and whether he needs more attention. Parents should know their child. They should know the dangers. Plus, they need to know CPR. Very important.
So we're starting to work together on signals, what to look for, him being more vocal to tell us, I'm having a little trouble today. That way we can start working on him right away as far as medication.
The Campos are grateful to the 911 dispatcher who was there when they needed help.
The operator, she was like team leader. We were only working with a few minutes, and that would have meant his life. Thank you is not enough.
The CPR class, the whole family's get involved in that. Life's valuable and it's precious, and you don't want to take nothing for granted.
He's starting to get into those argumentative, bullheaded teenage years. Thank God I've got this chance to watch him do his changes, to be obnoxious, and then to be good too when he is.
Next.
It's just the most unusual thing I've ever seen.
This operable up wounds to car accidents. You're about to step into the world of the people who save our lives on a daily basis. Some of the scenes that you'll see are graphic and intense, but this is not a recreation. It's the nightly reality in one of America's busiest trauma centers.
Houston Fire and Ambulance, what is your emergency?
Stabbed himself in the heart? Yes, he's dying. Is the knife still in it? Yes. Okay, don't pull it out, all right? Yeah, we're on it.
distraught wife's 911 call for help sends an ambulance racing through the night streets. For critically injured people in Houston, the destination is almost always Ben Taub Trauma Center, where lives are measured in minutes.
Hello, 58, come up on D down there. Do we have, any...
Got a knife in his chest and
Has he got a blood pressure?
I don't know about that. He'll be here about a minute.
Be careful not to dislodge the knife, huh?
Within 21 minutes of his wife's call, the stabbing victim arrives at the trauma center.
We're gonna put a chest tube in the central line, okay? Are you ready to take him up, or are you ready to do it? Don't dislodge the knife. Cut it. Cut the shirt.
Okay.
Cut the shirt. Cut the.
Clothes off. Sir, take it easy. Everything's gonna be okay. Be careful now.
Don't dislodge.
Let's call up the OR and tell them we're coming up with this guy. Put a chest tube in. Let's follow. Let's follow.
28-year-old Ron Miller is quickly prepped and rushed to surgery. 'Acting as a cork, pulling it out could cause Miller to bleed to death almost immediately. Thoracic surgeon Dr. Bill Turner will be in charge of the delicate surgery.
O negative blood. Tell them to bring me O negative blood.
With a stab wound to the heart, you have to act immediately.
You have a knife, Chief?
Dr. Turner opens Miller's chest between the 4th and 5th ribs to see the damage and control the bleeding before removing the knife.
Have the scissors.
They fear that the knife has critically damaged his heart or lungs.
Can you see this?
Because the knife is running through his stomach. He missed it. Oh my God! He missed it. Wow.
He missed everything major.
Somehow, this large knife had gone through this man's chest and had managed to miss all the major blood vessels of the lung and the heart itself. It had penetrated the wall of the left ventricle, maybe about a half an inch, and then bounced out. To me, just looking at it, I didn't think that there was any way that this man could have had this type of injury and gotten away with that.
Although it looked very impressive, that he'll be fine. He'll go home probably in about 4 or 5 days.
It's just the most unusual thing I've ever seen in the whole 18 years I've been a nurse. Was the pulsating knife. I don't think I'll ever forget it.
Houston Fire Ambulance, what's your emergency?
A truck just ran into a tree out in front of the apartments where I live. There's a lady out there trying to help her get her baby out the windshield.
So I just undid the window shield, and the baby was alive, and she wanted me to get him out of there, and I said, okay.
How is the baby, you know? Well, it looks like it's knocked out. All right, we'll get somebody out there. Thank you.
Another call for help in the night. Ben Taub Trauma Center gets as many as 60 trauma patients a day. This time, it's a baby boy injured in a car accident with his family.
Look at that big guy. So we're good. People were dilated when we first got there. They started to constrict. He's had a positive evidence all the way in, but no response to pain whatsoever.
Are you allergic to any medicine?
The boy's 22-year-old mother, Aura Rojas, is treated for minor injuries in the shock room next door.
He's only 2 years old? 20 months, okay.
I asked the mother, and I had a translator, and she said that the child was sitting on the lap without a seatbelt, and she was wearing her seatbelt. In the state of Texas, the rules for a seatbelt is to a child between 0 and 2 will be in a child's seat. We also found out that the father was over what the state considers to be intoxicated.
Within minutes of the boy's arrival, preliminary x-rays are taken and neurosurgeon Dr. Ian Armstrong begins to examine him.
Has he been medicated at all?
Not for
Okay. Does he move?
no, there's nothing.
Does not move anything? How about breathing? Does he have any spontaneous respiration? All these are close together and you see some wide space. We don't see any bony abnormalities, but we suspect some ligamentic damage. External trauma signs on him are minimal. He's got a small scratch in the forehead, so we don't anticipate finding anything, but we'll CT the head also.
When we heard information from the field that the child was unresponsive and not moving, at that point we suspected it was due to head injury. When we examined the child, he was not only unresponsive, he was limp, and there was no muscle tone at all. And it was at that juncture that we suspected a neck injury.
They take the baby to get a CAT scan of his brain and neck.
The CT scan indicated that the bones were not fractured, but there was some abnormal positioning of the vertebrae. We realized the child really did have a serious neck injury. Paralysis was likely. Knowing some of the circumstances around the injury, the child had been in the front seat, no seat belt. That makes it particularly upsetting.
Five days after the stabbing incident and surgery, Ron Miller is still in the surgery ward, but he'll be going home tomorrow with his wife Angela.
The doctor, he said that it was truly a miracle that my husband was alive, and he really didn't know how he pulled through it.
I still see that knife going bouncing. That's about all I can remember. All I can say is I'm gonna start praying more.
Ora Rojas comes to visit her baby James, hoping his prognosis has improved.
How's he doing today? You doing okay?
After observation, examining him daily, we found no improvement, no change. Cannot move his arms or legs and feels nothing below the neck. We felt that it would probably be permanent. He is going to be respirator dependent, bedridden. He will face recurrent infections, pneumonias, and his long-term outcome is grim.
Ora is only beginning to face what has happened to her child.
El niño que está muy grave, él está muy malo de la boca y del pescuezo.
You see a young, helpless child who has his life completely ruined in a matter of seconds. It takes its toll, particularly in light of the fact that a seatbelt or a child restraint could have prevented this sort of injury. But there are many instances where the outcome isn't as grim, and it's those few situations where you are successful in saving the child that makes it all worthwhile.
2.5 weeks later, Ron Miller's recovery seems miraculously complete, but he refuses to explain who really stabbed him or why. He says only that it was payday. He went and got drunk, and that's when it started.
It's something that no one needs to know. It's a very long story, and I have no comment on that.
We're gonna make it?
Huh?
We're gonna make it.
I'm just thankful. Every day I wake up, I feel better and better. I'm living proof. If it wasn't for my doctors and my wife praying for me, I'd be dead.
Each pizza? Yeah.
And I'm one of the ones that did make it. I'm very happy.
For more full episodes of Rescue 911, hit the big red button and subscribe. Sorry for the quantity of this video. My iPad is messed up and it's blurry in one direction.